Risk assessment methodology. Now, there are two factors needed to calculate the risk rating for any particular risky scenario. The first factor is the business impact, which we already saw. It is the most likely business impact in terms of financial, reputational, and regulatory damage to the organization due to a particular risky situation materializing. The second factor is likelihood of occurrence. How likely is a particular risky situation actually coming true? Now, once we have these two factors figured out, the risk is calculated as the product of business impact and likelihood of occurrence. Now, organizations usually use a risk matrix where we have business impact along one axis and likelihood along the other axis to arrive at the risk rating. Now, it is always a good idea to express the risk in plain English in terms of the actual business impact statement and the likelihood of occurrence statement rather than just providing a risk rating. Otherwise, there is a chance that the underlying complexities of the risk are lost in translation when it is communicated to senior management. Now, let's see what I meant with the help of two risk scenarios. The first scenario is where an organization has customer confidential data which is stored in a customer table in a database. Now, the customer confidential data is not encrypted before it is pushed to the database. The second risk scenario is an organization with many employees and endpoint devices or laptops, but the hard disks of those laptops are not encrypted. Now, the business impact due to the first risk scenario is that because the confidential data is not encrypted, it gets to the wrong hands and leaks out of the organization, and the organization faces regulatory and reputational damage. Whereas the business impact in the second risk scenario is that employees misplace the laptops or the laptops get stolen, and because the laptops contain confidential data, the confidential data leaks out to the public and the company faces regulatory and reputational damage. Now, we can see that both the business impacts are similar in nature. The likelihood of the first risk scenario is low to medium. This is because employees who have access to the data are only those people with read-only or above privileges to the database. Whereas the likelihood for the second scenario is high because the employees of the organization are highly mobile and they always carry the laptop for work, and there is a high chance that the laptop can get misplaced or stolen. Now, if we analyze these risks in terms of the risk matrix, for the first scenario, we know that the business impact is high, so we are along this column, and the likelihood is low to medium. So let's say that we are here, and then the risk rating is highest risk. Now, for the second scenario, again, we know that the business impact is high, so we are along this line, and the likelihood is also high, so we are at here, and we again arrive at a risk rating of highest risk. Now we can see that both scenarios have a risk rating of highest risk, even though the underlying complexities of the risk are different. From analysis, we know that risk situation number 2 is a much more critical risk because the likelihood of this occurring is much higher than that of risk scenario number 1. So this is why it is very important that when we are communicating risk situations to top level management, rather than just giving them the risk rating, communicate to them in plain English the business impact statement and the likelihood statement so that they get the complete picture and they can make better decisions at handling the risk.